Reflections on the Good News of Jesus Christ according to Matthew. Reflections on the Good News of Jesus Christ according to Matthew for Palm Sunday. Jesus stood before the governor, Pontius Pilate, who questioned him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus said, "You say so." And when he was accused by the chief priests and elders, he made no answer. Then Pilate said to him, "Do you not hear how many things they are testifying against you?" But he did not answer him one word, so that the governor was greatly amazed. Now on the occasion of the feast, the governor was accustomed to release to the crowd one prisoner whom they wished. And at that time, they had a notorious prisoner called Barabbas. So when they had assembled, Pilate said to them, "Which one do you want me to release to you, Barabbas or Jesus, called Christ?" For he knew that it was out of envy that they had handed him over. While he was still seated on the bench, his wife sent him a message. "Have nothing to do with that righteous man. I suffered much in a dream today because of him." The chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowds to ask for Barabbas, but to destroy Jesus. The governor said to them in reply, "Which of the two do you want me to release to you?" They answered, "Barabbas." Pilate said to them, "Then what shall I do with Jesus called Christ?" They all said, "Let him be crucified." But he said, "Why? What evil has he done?" They only shouted the louder, "Let him be crucified." When Pilate saw that he was not succeeding at all, but that a riot was breaking out instead, he took water and washed his hands in the sight of the crowd, saying, "I am innocent of this man's blood. Look to it yourselves." And the whole people said in reply, "His blood be upon us and upon our children." Then he released Barabbas to them. But after he had Jesus scourged, and then handed him over to be crucified. Then the soldiers of the governor took Jesus inside the praetorium and gathered the whole cohort around him. They stripped off his clothes and threw a scarlet military cloak about him. Weaving a crown out of thorns, they placed it on his head and a reed in his right hand. And kneeling before him, they mocked him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" They spat upon him and took the reed and kept striking him on the head. And when they had mocked him, they stripped him of the cloak, dressed him in his own clothes, and led him off to crucify him. As they were going out, they met a Cyrenian named Simon. This man they pressed into service to carry his cross. And when they came to a place called Golgotha, which means place of the skull, they gave Jesus wine to drink mixed with gall. But when he had tasted it, he refused to drink. After they had crucified him, they divided his garments by casting lots. Then they sat down and kept watch over him there. And they placed over his head the written charge against him, "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." Two revolutionaries were crucified with him, one on his right, the other on his left. Those passing by reviled him, shaking their heads and saying, You who would destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days, save yourself, if you are the Son of God, and come down from the cross. Likewise, the chief priests, with the scribes and the elders, mocked him and said, He saved others, he cannot save himself. So he is the King of Israel? Let him come down from the cross now, and we will believe in him. He trusted in God. Let God deliver him now, if he wants him. For he said, I am the Son of God. The revolutionaries who were crucified with him also kept abusing him in the same way. From noon onward, darkness came over the whole land until 3 in the afternoon. And about 3 o'clock, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? Some of the bystanders who heard it said, This one is calling for Elijah. Immediately, one of them ran to get a sponge. He soaked it in wine, and putting it on a reed, gave it to him to drink. But the rest said, Wait, let us see if Elijah comes to save him. But Jesus cried out again in a loud voice and gave up his spirit. And behold, the veil of the sanctuary was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth quaked, rocks were split, tombs were opened, and the bodies of many saints who had fallen asleep were raised. And coming forth from their tombs after his resurrection, they entered the holy city and appeared to many. The centurion and the men with him who were keeping watch over Jesus feared greatly when they saw the earthquake and all that was happening. And they said, Truly, this was the Son of God. The Gospel of the Lord. An old story, one we've heard many times, perhaps like an early version of the Oberammergau Passion Play for us to watch and observe, complete with the predictable tugs on our emotions at the appropriate moments. But what if we were to take the risk of seeing if we might recognize ourselves in one or the other of the characters? What might the story say to us then? Perhaps you are Jesus, who might well have ridden the donkey into Jerusalem because he was tired of the demands his ministry made on him, tired of the lack of understanding on the part of the people, or for that matter, on the part of the apostles, tired of having his hopes dashed time after time. Perhaps you were one of the apostles, who seemed to have their minds set on establishing a kingdom in which they would have power and importance and recognition. A kingdom in which all the problems would have quick and easy solutions, in which all their dreams would come true. Perhaps you are Peter, who was full of enthusiasm, admiration, even love for Jesus, who felt strong in his faith and firm in his commitment to the Lord, but who had yet to learn the full extent of his own frailty, weakness, and sinfulness. Peter, who did not yet know how much he needed Jesus. Perhaps you are Judas, who started out with good intentions, I'm sure, but whose pride got the better of him, to the point that he knew better than Jesus did how to handle things, who let his own goals and ambitions become more important than Jesus' message, who forgot all that he had heard Jesus say about forgiveness and ended up broken, embittered, and destroyed because of his own pride. Perhaps you are one of the high priests who only wanted what seemed best, but whose passion for keeping order and control prevented them from remembering that God always breaks into our lives in ways that are surprising, that God continually disrupts our plans and expectations because God's hopes for us are so much greater than anything we have yet dreamed of. Perhaps you are Pilate, who was also concerned about order and control and looking good in the eyes of others, particularly his superiors, who frankly could not have cared less one way or the other about Jesus and his message, but whose chief interest in life lay in the next promotion, the next step on his career ladder, and so was willing to dispose of Jesus so that his own ambitions would not be threatened. Perhaps you are one of the nameless, faceless members of the crowd, good, ordinary people trying to live their lives in the best way they knew how, perhaps attracted to Jesus, yes, but not yet committed to him, not yet willing to change their lives in keeping with his message, and so finding it easier simply to go along with what everyone else was doing rather than run the risk of being different, following their head rather than their heart. Who are you in this story? My brothers and sisters, perhaps you and I are among the many people who have been taught to watch from the sidelines, feeling sorry for Jesus, yes, but perhaps also secretly thankful that because Jesus did all this suffering and dying for me, I don't have to. But then along comes life, hitting us with the suffering and dying that accompanies sickness or economic upheaval, or the loss of reputation, or the death of a relationship, or any number of other crises, moments that might make us turn to God and cry out, "Why me? I'm one of the good guys. I go to church. I say my prayers. I do good deeds for others. This isn't fair. This isn't supposed to happen to me." This shouldn't have happened to Jesus either. Brothers and sisters, Jesus did not endure all this suffering and dying so that we do not have to. He did all of this to show us how to endure all of our own experiences of suffering and dying, however they happen throughout life, so that those experiences do not lead us into anger, bitterness, seeking revenge. On the cross, Jesus was humiliated, shamed, brutalized. That pain stretched his heart to a great depth. But that new space did not become filled with bitterness and anger. Rather, it became filled with a depth of empathy and forgiveness beyond our ability to understand. And now we know why Jesus never says, "Worship me," although we wish he had. Because then I could come to church, spend my hour or so worshiping Jesus, and then be free to go on my way and live life the rest of the week just as I choose. But that's not how it is. What Jesus does say again and again is, "Follow me." Follow me all the way through suffering and dying, all the way to resurrection. I'll show you how to do it. Just follow me. And how does he do it, even when he is feeling abandoned on the cross? He does it by clinging to the trust he has in the Father. Even then, in the midst of darkness and death, such trust makes no sense to Jesus or to us. But then, making sense is something done in the mind. Trust, especially this trust, does not come from the mind. Trust for Jesus and for us comes from the heart. He trusted anyway. And that's how we do it, by following him. And that is also how we, like Jesus, will finally escape death. It does not have the last word. You see, the tomb is empty. The Father is waiting to welcome us home. Thanks for listening.